The baccarat crystal chandeliers sparkled above the panoramic terrace of the Mensa estate, casting thousands of golden reflections across the powdered faces of Abidjan's elite. At the heart of the upscale Plateau district, this mansion, with its revisited colonial architecture, dominated the Ebrié lagoon with ostentatious grandeur. The scent of frangipani mingled with French champagne aromas and the crystalline laughter of guests in evening wear. Mrs. Igosua Mensah, radiant in her golden silk boubou embroidered with silver threads, paraded among her guests like a queen in her court. Her solid gold jewelry clinked with each theatrical gesture, and her artificial smile never left her lips when addressing the French ambassador or the ministers present. "My dear friends," she whispered while raising her vintage champagne flute, "tonight we celebrate not only the expansion of our business, but also our privileged position in this beautiful modern Ivory Coast." Applause erupted as servers in white livery circulated with refined delicacies. Nobody noticed the discreet silhouette slipping through the service entrance, hugging the walls like a shadow. Amina Traoré discreetly adjusted her colorful headscarf that poorly concealed her hair, disheveled by an exhausting day. Her aching feet, in worn sandals, made her grimace with each step on the cold marble flooring. At 24, her face retained natural beauty that neither fatigue nor daily humiliations had managed to tarnish. Her hazel eyes sparkled with an inner flame that nothing seemed capable of extinguishing. She was heading toward the kitchens when Mrs. Mensah's piercing voice stopped her cold. "Well, well, look who honors us with her presence." Silence fell over the assembly like a lead blanket. All eyes converged on Amina, frozen in the middle of the salon. Her heart beat so loudly she feared they could hear it in this heavy silence. "My dear guests," continued Mrs. Mensah with a cruel smile, "allow me to introduce Amina, let's say, our little housekeeping helper. She comes straight from the northern villages, don't you, dear?" Embarrassed murmurs ran through the audience. The French ambassador looked away, uncomfortable. "Come closer, Amina," ordered her employer in a falsely cheerful tone. "Our guests would surely like to see what a real African from the countryside looks like." Amina's cheeks flamed, but she advanced with firm steps, chin raised. Her grandmother had always told her, "My daughter, they can take your possessions, but never your dignity." "Look at this touching simplicity," continued Mrs. Mensah, circling Amina like a vulture. "This authenticity, so rustic. Tell us, my dear, how many huts did you clean today?" Nervous laughter erupted. Amina clenched her fists, feeling tears rising, but refused to lower her eyes. That's when it happened. In a gesture of silent protest, Amina straightened her shoulders. The small leather cord holding her pendant, worn by years of use, suddenly snapped. The jewel fell onto the marble with a metallic chime that resonated like thunder in the salon. The audience held its breath. At the back of the room, near the bay windows, a tall, elegant man in traditional Kente attire froze, his champagne glass halfway to his lips. Kofi Asante, heir of an influential Ghanaian family and passionate about African art, stared at the pendant with striking intensity. His eyes widened, that symbol engraved in gold, those geometric patterns, that particular shape. "Impossible," he murmured, so low that only he could hear himself. Mrs. Mensah, troubled by this sudden silence, leaned toward the jewelry. "What is this trinket? Where did you steal this, little impudent one?" But Kofi didn't take his eyes off the pendant, his face expressing total stupefaction that chilled Amina's blood. What did he see in this simple maternal inheritance that overwhelmed him so much? The mud-walled huts stretched under the century-old baobab like ochre pearls in the golden twilight light. The village of Korogo came alive to the rhythms of pestles crushing millet and melodious voices of Baoulé women singing while preparing the evening meal. The air was fragrant with sandalwood and red earth after rain. Little Amina, barely 12 years old, sat cross-legged before her grandmother Ajua, eyes wide with admiration. The old woman, despite her persistent cough, wove wonderful tales while braiding her granddaughter's hair with colorful beads. "Mama Ajua," the child whispered, "why do you always say I have royal blood?" The grandmother smiled, her wrinkled fingers tenderly caressing the small golden pendant she had just hung around Amina's neck. "Because your ancestors were kings and queens, my child. This jewel, it tells a story you'll understand when the time comes. But we are poor, Mama Ajua. The richness of the heart is worth more than all the gold in the world, my daughter. Never forget where you come from, but above all, never forget who you truly are." Back to the present. At Villa Mensa, Amina hastily picked up her pendant, cheeks still burning with shame. The guests had dispersed while murmuring, leaving behind a scent of embarrassment and spilled champagne. Mrs. Mensa, furious with rage, brutally grabbed her by the arm. "You impudent creature! You dare wear jewelry in my house?" she spat, her manicured nails digging into Amina's skin. "Where did you steal this?" This jewel belonged to my mother," Amina stammered, instinctively protecting the pendant against her chest. "Liar!" The slaps rained down now. "Maids like you don't have gold jewelry. I'm calling the police." "Mrs. Mensa, what's happening?" The gentle but firm voice of Fatu, the cook, interrupted the scene. A tall woman in her 40s with kind features. She worked for a neighboring family and was the only friend Amina had managed to make in this hostile neighborhood. "This thief is wearing jewelry that cannot belong to her." Fatu exchanged a knowing look with Amina. They had known each other for months, sharing their meager meals and hopes for a better life. "Perhaps you should verify before accusing," Fatu suggested diplomatically. Mrs. Mensa glared at her. "You defend her too? Both of you get out of my sight. Amina, you'll come back tomorrow to clean the toilets on your knees. That will teach you humility." An hour later, in the perfumed gardens of the villa, Amina walked slowly toward the exit, her pendant clutched in her trembling hand. The city's neon lights twinkled in the distance, but her heart was heavy as stone. "Excuse me," she startled. The elegant man from the evening stood in the shadow of a flamboyant tree, his serious face lit by the moon. Kofi Asante approached cautiously, as if approaching a wounded animal. "I'm sorry for what you experienced tonight," he said softly. "My name is Kofi." Amina instinctively stepped back. Another rich man who wanted to amuse himself with the poor maid. "Don't be afraid," he continued, raising his hands in a sign of peace. "I mean you no harm, it's just your pendant." He paused, seeming to search for his words. "My friend, Dr. Kwame, collects ancient African art. He lives just across the street. Would you agree to show us this jewel? I think it could be very particular." Amina frowned. "Particular how? It's hard to explain. But if I'm right..." Kofi plunged his gaze into hers, and for the first time that evening, she read sincerity that touched her. "If I'm right, this pendant could change your life." At the same moment, Mamadou, the old night guard, approached, limping. Silent witness to all the neighborhood's injustices for years, he had watched Mrs. Mensa's cruelty toward employees grow. "Miss Amina," he whispered, leaning toward her, "this man speaks the truth. Dr. Kwame is a good person. Maybe the time has come to discover what your grandmother left you." Amina caressed the pendant, remembering Mama Ajua's mysterious words. "Never forget who you truly are." Kofi waited, breathless, his eyes shining with urgency she didn't understand. "Where exactly do you come from?" he suddenly asked her, his voice trembling with contained emotion. "And how long has your family possessed this jewel?" The next morning, Amina stood before Dr. Kwame Osei's villa, her sweaty hands gripping the pendant in her palm. The contemporary architecture of the residence, harmonious blend of modern lines and traditional Akan motifs, contrasted with the anxiety knotting her stomach. Kofi waited for her on the porch, dressed in simple linen pants and white shirt that revealed his natural simplicity, so different from the arrogance of other wealthy people she encountered. "Thank you for coming," he said with that gentleness in his voice that troubled her. "Dr. Kwame is eager to meet the owner of this extraordinary jewel." The door opened to a man around 60 with graying temples and eyes sparkling with intelligence. Dr. Kwame Ose warmly shook Amina's hands, a gesture of respect that surprised her after so many humiliations. "Miss Traoré, it's an honor. Kofi told me about your pendant. May I?" With trembling hand, Amina handed him the jewel. The doctor lifted it toward the light, and his face illuminated. "By all the ancestors, Kofi, look at these engravings, these Adinkra symbols, this chiseling technique." He led them to his library, fascinating sanctuary where thousands of books on African history aligned. Dogon masks, Benin bronzes, and Kente textiles adorned the wood-paneled walls. The smell of precious wood and old bound leather created a hushed, almost sacred atmosphere. Dr. Kwame delicately pulled out several thick books, his expert fingers leafing through yellowed pages of British colonial archives. Amina and Kofi leaned over his work table, their shoulders brushing in this studious intimacy. "Here!" suddenly exclaimed the doctor. "Look at this photograph from 1896, the Ashanti royal court jewels seized by the British after the war." Amina's eyes widened. On the yellowed page, a detailed sketch represented her pendant with troubling precision. "This jewel belonged to Princess Akosua Ya Asantewa," continued Dr. Kwame, his voice trembling with emotion, "a legendary woman who led the Ashanti resistance against colonizers. She was—" He interrupted himself, intensely scrutinizing Amina's face. Then he got up hastily, searching among his documents until he pulled out an ancient photographic portrait. "My God," murmured Kofi. In the sepia photograph, a young woman with proud bearing stared at the lens with the same determination that shone in Amina's eyes. The fine features, delicate curve of cheekbones, that particular way of raising the chin. The resemblance was striking. Is that me?" stammered Amina, her legs giving way beneath her. Kofi caught her instinctively, his strong arms surrounding her with protective tenderness. In this gesture, something changed between them. She looked up at him and discovered a gaze of infinite gentleness, devoid of all condescension. For the first time, someone looked at her not as a domestic, but as a woman worthy of respect and love. "You don't realize, do you?" he murmured, his breath brushing her hair. "You carry the blood of kings within you. This strength I saw last night when you kept your head high despite humiliation. It's your ancestors' heritage." Dr. Kwame cleared his throat discreetly and resumed his explanations. "According to our genealogical archives, Princess Akosua had a daughter, Ama, born in 1920. Ama disappeared during the political troubles of the 60s. Many thought she was dead, but he now showed a complex family tree covered with annotations. If this Ama had descendants who fled to Ivory Coast—" "Miss Traoré, what was your grandmother's name?" "Ajua," whispered Amina, the puzzle pieces assembling in her mind. "She always said she came from the east, from the land of gold." "Ajua, diminutive of Akosua," confirmed Dr. Kwame. "My dear child, you are not only a descendant of Ashanti royalty, you are potentially the direct heir of one of West Africa's most prestigious lineages." Tears now flowed freely down Amina's cheeks. Kofi tightened his embrace, and she let herself lean against his shoulder, breathing his reassuring scent of sandalwood and good man. "All this time," she sobbed, "Mama Ajua was trying to tell me, never forget who you truly are." "You already knew it deep down," murmured Kofi, gently caressing her hair. "This natural dignity, this innate nobility. Last night, you were the only true aristocrat in that assembly of upstarts." Amina raised toward him, a gaze wet with tears and gratitude. In his brown eyes, she read sincere admiration that warmed her wounded heart. Slowly, without taking his eyes off her, Kofi wiped away a tear on her cheek with an infinitely tender gesture. "You're not alone anymore now," he whispered. Through the library window, a silhouette froze in the bougainvillea bushes. Mrs. Mensah, who had followed Amina to spy on her, pressed a trembling hand against her mouth, her face distorted by growing panic. She had heard every word, And if this little domestic she humiliated daily was really a princess? Her family, her fortune, her social reputation, everything could collapse. That night, Mrs. Mensah didn't close her eyes. Sitting in her luxurious office, she paced on the Persian carpet, her silk slippers clicking nervously against her heels. Dr. Kwame's words resonated in her head like a waking nightmare. The direct heir of one of West Africa's most prestigious lineages. With trembling hand, she opened the safe hidden behind a master painting and pulled out a dusty file she hadn't consulted for years. Her own family's genealogical documents spread across the mahogany desk, photocopies of birth certificates, colonial correspondence, property inventories, everything she had always wanted to forget. Her great-grandfather, Kwaku Mensah, had indeed been a British colonial agent at the beginning of the 20th century. Official reports were formal. He had participated in recovery operations of Ashanti cultural goods in 1896. In more direct terms, he had pillaged the royal treasure with colonial administration blessing. "My God," she murmured, discovering a detailed inventory. Among recovered objects was expressly listed a solid gold pendant bearing Princess Akosua Ya Asantewa's coat of arms, adorned with Adinkra symbols. If Amina was truly the legal heir, she could claim not only this jewel, but also reparations for all stolen treasures. The Mensah fortune, built on this historical pillage, would crumble like a house of cards. The next morning, Amina arrived for her workday when Mrs. Mensah intercepted her in the entrance hall. Her usual smile had disappeared, replaced by an expression of calculated ferocity. "Amina, my dear," she began with a honeyed voice, "I've thought a lot about our incident last night." She pulled out a thick envelope from her Hermes handbag. "Here are 500,000 CFA francs. Enough to return to your village, care for your grandmother, and forget these ridiculous princess stories." Amina stepped back, shocked by this enormous sum, but instinctively understanding the trap. "Madam, I don't understand." "Oh yes, you understand very well." The politeness mask fell. "You think I didn't hear your ravings at that old fool, Dr. Kwame's? Princesses, really? A little maid like you?" Amina's eyes hardened. "I am not for sale, Mrs. Mensah. Everyone has a price, little fool. Take this money and disappear, or what?" The cruel smile returned to Mrs. Mensah's lips. "Or you'll discover what happens to liars who tell tall tales." That same afternoon, Amina discovered the extent of her employer's revenge. Mrs. Mensah had called all the rich families in the neighborhood, spreading poisonous rumors. Amina was a thief, a mythomaniac, a girl of ill repute who invented incredible stories to extort money from credulous people. One by one, doors closed. Mrs. Kouassi, for whom she cleaned twice a week, dismissed her without notice. Mr. Diabate refused to open his door to her. Even the corner grocer, bribed by Mrs. Mensah, now refused to give her credit. Late afternoon, Amina found herself in the popular district of Abobo at Fatou's. Her friend's small concrete blockhouse contrasted cruelly with the plateau villas, but the welcome was warm. Fatou prepared rice and beans on a gas stove, surrounded by her 3 children doing homework on a wobbly table. "That witch has really lost her mind," grumbled Fatou, while serving mint tea. "But you know what? That proves she's afraid. People only attack when they feel threatened." Now Fatou's neighbors, alerted by Amina's story, began flooding into the small courtyard. Mama Jeneba, the neighborhood's eldest, spoke up. "My daughter, we women of the people recognize nobility of heart. This Mrs. Mensah can have all the money in the world. She'll never have your class." Murmurs of approval warmed Amina's heart, but didn't solve her immediate problem. Without work, how could she send money to her grandmother? How could she survive? At that moment, Kofi appeared at the courtyard entrance, respectfully dressed in simple white bubu. He politely greeted the women in Baule, earning approving smiles. "Amina," he said gently, "I learned what happened. Mrs. Mensah has crossed the line." "Mr. Kofi," intervened Mama Jeneba, "this little one is like our daughter. If you want to help her, your intentions must be pure. Kofi respectfully bowed his head. I give you my word as a man. Amina, I contacted the elders of the Ashanti Royal Council in Kumasi. They're ready to receive you, to officially authenticate your origins. He pulled plane tickets from his pocket. The trip will cost nothing. My pilot friend will take us in his private plane. You can meet your true ancestors, discover your heritage, and return with proof nobody can contest. Amina hesitated, torn between hope and pride. Accepting this help, wasn't it becoming dependent on Kofi? But refusing meant letting Mrs. Mensah win and trample her dignity. Fatu squeezed her hand. My sister, sometimes accepting help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Kofi waited, his gaze full of that tenderness that overwhelmed her. In his eyes, she read not pity but deep respect and something even more troubling. If I accept, she murmured, what do you expect from me in return? Kofi's answer surprised her with its simplicity. Just that you remain yourself. Amina descended from Kofi's Mercedes, transformed. The trip to Ghana had changed her. She now wore a magnificent royal blue and gold kente offered by Ashanti elders, and her pendant shone proudly on her chest. But more than her clothes, it was her gaze that had changed. The timid young woman had given way to a princess conscious of her worth, straight as a royal baobab. In her hand, she preciously held the official document signed by the Asante Hene himself, formal recognition of her filiation with Princess Akosua Asantewa's lineage, heroine of Ashanti resistance. Are you ready? Murmured Kofi, elegant in his traditional Ghanaian costume. She nodded, heart beating. Mrs. Mensah was organizing her biggest reception of the year tonight in honor of the Ivorian Minister of Culture and several African ambassadors. Irony of fate wanted Amina to choose precisely this evening to reveal the truth. The villa sparkled with 1,000 lights, like during that first humiliation that seemed to belong to another life. The same worldly guests circulated on the terrace, sipping champagne and exchanging gossip. But this time, Amina wasn't entering through the service entrance. She walked up the main alley on Kofi's arm, under the amazed gazes of valets. Mrs. Mensah, resplendent in a Parisian evening gown, nearly dropped her glass seeing them. What are you doing here?" she stammered, her complexion turning ashen grey. "Good evening, Mrs. Mensah," replied Amina with royal serenity. "I hope you won't mind that I accepted His Excellency the Minister's invitation." Indeed, Kofi had used his diplomatic relations to have Amina officially invited to this reception. Mrs. Mensah couldn't say anything without losing face before her prestigious guests. The audience began murmuring. This young woman radiating natural nobility, who was she? Her proud bearing and gleam of traditional jewelry commanded respect. The Minister of Culture, erudite man passionate about African history, approached with curiosity. "Miss, allow me to tell you that your kente is absolutely sumptuous. These colors, it's royal Ashanti kente, isn't it?" "Indeed, Excellence," replied Amina gracefully. "It was offered to me by the Asante Hene himself during my official recognition." Deadly silence fell over the assembly. The minister's eyes widened. "Your recognition?" Amina solemnly unfolded the official document. Her voice carried clearly in the silence. "I am Amina Traoré, great-great-granddaughter of Princess Akosua Asantewa, heroine of Ashanti resistance. This pendant," she indicated the jewel that sparkled, "is the direct inheritance of my royal lineage, officially recognized by Manhaya Palace." The effect was electric. The Ghanaian ambassador, present in the audience, bowed respectfully. Admiring murmurs replaced former contemptuous looks. Mrs. Mensah, livid, tried to regain composure. "Come now, these stories are not stories, madam," Amina firmly interrupted. "But since we're speaking of history, let's speak of yours." She turned toward the captivated audience. "Did you know that the Mensah family fortune comes from colonial pillage? That Mrs. Mensah's great-grandfather participated in stealing Ashanti treasures in 1896? My pendant was part of that loot." An indignant murmur ran through the crowd. The French ambassador coughed, embarrassed. Mrs. Mensah wavered, supported by her husband, who seemed to have aged 10 years. But while everyone expected her to demand justice and reparations, Amina again surprised her audience. "However," she continued in a clear voice, "I didn't come for revenge. Our ancestors taught us that true nobility lies in forgiveness and construction, not destruction." She turned directly toward Mrs. Mensah, who was now crying silently. "Mrs. Mensah, you humiliated me, despised me, treated me as less than nothing, but you also, unknowingly, revealed who I truly was. For that, I forgive you." The assembly hung on her words. "Rather than claiming reparations that will never repair the past, I've decided to create a foundation to help all housemaids in this city, because each of them carries within her the same dignity as I do." Applause erupted, authentic this time. The minister warmly shook Amina's hands, and several guests approached to promise their support for her future foundation. Later in the evening, on the terrace overlooking illuminated Abidjan, Amina and Kofi admired the sparkling panorama. Lagoon lights reflected like diamonds on dark water, and in the distance, modern skyscrapers stood alongside mosque minarets and popular district tin roofs, perfect image of this eternal and moving Africa. "You were magnificent tonight," murmured Kofi, his fingers brushing Amina's. "I finally understood who I truly was," she replied, turning toward him. "And who I want to become." Their gazes met under tropical stars. Slowly, without a word, Kofi took Amina's face in his hands and placed a tender kiss on her lips. A kiss that sealed not only their budding love, but also the union of two noble souls, united by the same ideal of justice and beauty. "I love you, Amina," he whispered against her lips. "Princess or domestic, I don't care. It's your heart I love, and I love you for the good man you are," she replied, her eyes shining with emotion. But as they kissed under Abidjan's starry sky, Amina couldn't imagine that her decision to create a foundation rather than claim reparations would trigger a silent revolution that would forever transform housemaids' condition throughout Ivory Coast. Abidjan's morning sun bathed the foundation's brand new offices with golden light. Behind her desk, carved from Iroko wood with traditional motifs, Amina read activity reports with deep satisfaction. In just 6 months, the Akosua Ya Foundation had revolutionized the condition of more than 300 housemaids in the Ivorian capital. Professional training, literacy courses, legal aid against abusive employers, microcredits to create cooperatives. The foundation had become a beacon of hope in popular districts. "Director Miss," announced Fatou, entering the office with a broad smile. "Field news is excellent. 25 women opened their small businesses thanks to our microcredits, and 15 others found decent jobs thanks to our training programs." Fatou now directed the professional integration department, having herself benefited from the Foundation's training programs. Her newfound confidence testified to this silent revolution Amina had triggered. "And Mrs. Mensah?" asked Amina gently. "She arrives in an hour for her volunteer day at the Literacy Center. You know, she's really changed." Indeed, Akosua Mensah's transformation was spectacular. Socially ruined after the evening's revelations, she had first tried to flee to Europe. But guilt and remorse caught up with her. She returned to Abidjan 3 months later, humble and repentant, begging Amina's forgiveness. "Let me redeem my mistakes," she had pleaded. "Let me serve those I despised." Today, the former society woman taught reading to illiterate domestics, shared her meals with the most destitute, and gradually found humanity she had lost in wealth's arrogance. Kofi peeked through the office door, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "My princess, are you ready for the most beautiful day of our lives?" Amina smiled, her heart racing. Today they were marrying according to Baule traditions in Amina's native village, then according to Ashanti rites to honor her royal heritage. Kofi had renounced half his personal fortune to finance the foundation, proving his love transcended material interests. A few hours later, Korhogo village. The village had transformed into a kaleidoscope of colors and joy. Multicolored pagnas, royal kente, solid gold jewelry, drums resonating to ancestral dance rhythms. Never had Korhogo known such celebration. Under the great baobab where child Amina listened to her grandmother's tales, a sumptuous canopy had been erected. Ashanti blue and gold fabrics harmoniously mingled with baule red and yellow cottons, symbolizing the union of two noble African lineages. Mama Ajua, miraculously healed since her granddaughter found her roots, presided at the ceremony's center. At 85, her eyes sparkled with pride and happiness. She held in her trembling hands the same pendant that had triggered everything, ready to officially transmit it to the new generation. "My children," she declared in still firm voice, "this jewel traveled through trials and humiliations to find its legitimate place. Like you, it proves that true nobility is never lost." Amina, resplendent in her bridal kente embroidered with gold threads, knelt before her grandmother. Kofi, majestic in his traditional Ashanti costume, did likewise. Around them, 300 guests, village elders, foundation employees, Ghanaian and Ivorian dignitaries, attended this historic ceremony. Even Mrs. Mensah was present, discreet in simple pagne, tears in her eyes, seeing this apotheosis of reconciliation. The village griot began nuptial chants while women threw frangipani petals. Amina and Kofi exchanged vows in moving mixture of baule and twi, swearing to serve together their people's dignity. "Through this marriage," proclaimed the village elder, "we celebrate not only two hearts' union, but the rebirth of our African pride." Amina is no longer just the village daughter or Ashanti princess. She has become the symbol of what we can all accomplish when we never forget who we truly are. Women's ululations exploded, mixed with frenzied rhythms of djembe and kora. The celebration continued until dawn, in this perfect communion between tradition and modernity, between humility and nobility, between forgiveness and justice. As the sun rose over the celebrating village, Amina and Kofi walked hand in hand under the century-old baobab. The pendant shone softly on Amina's chest, heavy with all her ancestors' history, but light with all future promises. "You know," murmured Kofi, caressing his wife's cheek, "I never would have imagined that a society evening would change our lives to this extent." Amina smiled, her eyes shining with new wisdom that trials had brought her. Mama Ajua was right from the beginning. It wasn't chance, it was destiny. That day, Amina understood that true nobility isn't measured by gold we wear, nor blood flowing in our veins, but by dignity we preserve facing trials and love we give the world. Because in Africa, we know that every soul carries within itself the seed of tomorrow's kings and queens. This story of Amina reminds us of universal truth. No matter where we come from or what trials we face, our dignity and worth never depend on others' gaze. Every person carries within unique nobility waiting to be revealed. Humiliation may break us temporarily, but it can also become the trigger of our renaissance. Like Amina, we all have power to transform our wounds into strength, our tears into wisdom, and our defeats into brilliant victories. True wealth isn't found in what we possess, but in love we give and dignity we preserve facing life's storms. If this story touched your heart and you want to discover other inspiring tales celebrating strength, resilience, and beauty of our communities, don't hesitate to subscribe to our channel by clicking the red button just below this video and drop us a like if this story of love and dignity warmed your soul. From what city are you watching us today? Let us know in the comments below.